a werewolf shifter romance audiobook, written by Jane. Prologue. The scent of ancient stone, rich earth, and Valerius's own unique musk had become Rebecca's truest home. 3 years had spun by since the reckoning at Shadowmoon, since Thorn and Lyra's reign of cruelty crumbled like dry leaves. Now, the Lycan King's fortress, once a place of intimidating grandeur, felt like the beating heart of her very existence. She stood on a high balcony, the cool morning breeze caressing her face, carrying the distant sounds of a thriving kingdom. Below, the Lycan warriors trained, their movements a symphony of power. Children's laughter, bright and unrestrained, echoed from the courtyards. It was a peace hard-won, a peace she had helped build. Her fingers, no longer trembling with insecurity, traced the intricate carvings on the stone railing. Valerius had commissioned it, a subtle addition to the ancient structure, a symbol of their unity. He often said her touch brought life to everything. And just like that, a small, vibrant vine, its leaves a deep emerald, curled around the cold stone, reaching for the sun. It was a tangible manifestation of her unique power, no longer a chaotic surge, but a gentle, consistent flow. She had learned to nurture, to heal, to bring forth life from barrenness. This was her strength, the one Thorn had dismissed as nothing. Can Rebecca ever truly believe in her own worth? The question, once a haunting whisper, had finally been silenced by the resounding truth of her own power, her own purpose. Soon after, a deep, resonant rumble vibrated through the stone beneath her feet. Valerius. His scent, a comforting blend of pine and raw power, enveloped her before his arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her back against his solid chest. Lost in thought, Luna? His voice, a low purr against her ear, sent shivers down her spine. His touch was a familiar warmth, a constant reminder of the fierce, unyielding love that had claimed her. "Just admiring our kingdom," she murmured, leaning into him. She felt it, clear as day, the deep contentment that radiated from him, mirroring her own. Their bond, the faded mate mark on her neck, no longer pulsed with pain or shock, but with a steady, comforting hum, a constant connection that transcended words. He was her anchor, her protector, but more importantly, her partner. He had shown her a love so profound, it had healed wounds she hadn't known could mend. "It is beautiful," he agreed, his chin resting on her shoulder. "Because you are here." His words were simple, yet they held the weight of centuries of solitude, now filled by her presence. He had waited so long for her, and that knowledge still humbled her. He had seen past the Omega, past the banishment, to the true Luna within. And she let it happen, this blossoming of self, this acceptance of love. Meanwhile, life in the kingdom was thriving. The Shadowmoon pack, under its new just alpha, was slowly rebuilding, shedding the oppressive shadow of Thorn's rule. Rebecca had visited them often, offering guidance, using her empathic touch to soothe old fears, to help the Omegas find their voices. She had even started a small initiative teaching them how to cultivate medicinal herbs, turning their traditional foraging skills into a source of pride and purpose. It was a quiet revolution, born from the ashes of her own past. One day, an old Omega, her face etched with years of hardship, had approached Rebecca. "Luna," she had whispered, her eyes wide with reverence, "we used to think we were cursed, but you are a blessing. You showed us that our quiet strengths, our gentle ways, are just as vital." Rebecca had felt a profound sense of fulfillment then, a deeper understanding of her role. It was not just about ruling, but about uplifting. But then, even in this peace, there were subtle undercurrents. Whispers from distant territories spoke of unusual shifts, of ancient ley lines stirring, of a growing unrest. He sighed, pulling her closer. "The world is changing, little mate. Not all embrace it. Some still cling to the old prejudices, the old power structures. They see your unique strength, your connection to life, as an anomaly. A threat. He paused, his voice dropping to a low growl. They call it the whisper. A power that can sway hearts, not just break bones. Her breath caught. The whisper. It was a name she hadn't heard before, a term for her specific abilities that hinted at something far more ancient and significant than she'd ever realized. It was an open loop, a question hanging in the air. What exactly was the whisper? And why did it concern Valerius so deeply? And what did it mean for her? But you don't fear it, she stated, looking up at him, her heart skipping a beat as his golden eyes met hers. Never, he affirmed, his gaze intense. I cherish it. I cherish you. But not everyone understands. Some will seek to control it, or destroy it. Because of that, we must always be vigilant. His words were a reminder that their peace, while profound, was not absolute. There were still those who would challenge them, those who would try to extinguish the light she had found. That night, as the moon climbed high, casting silver shadows through their chamber, Rebecca felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was Luna, yes, but she was also a guardian of a new way, a bridge between the old world and a more compassionate future. Her soul answered the call, ready for whatever came next. She knew deep down that their journey, while peaceful for now, was far from over. The world was vast, and her power, the whisper, was still unfolding. What challenges lay beyond the horizon? Only time would tell. The shard of glass in Rebecca's palm wasn't from the broken window she mended, but from the invisible barrier around her heart. It fractured a little more with every muttered insult, every dismissive glance. Her fingers, nimble and accustomed to the delicate repair of torn tunics, moved almost unconsciously, weaving coarse thread through rough fabric. But her ears, however much she wished them deaf, couldn't unhear the whispers. Still stitching rags? That Omega? A sharp voice, belonging to Alara, sliced through the quiet hum of the den. Can't even shift, another chimed in, a snicker following. What good is she, really? A burden on the pack. Rebecca's breath hitched. She tightened her grip on the needle. A tiny prick of pain, a welcome distraction from the familiar ache in her chest. She focused on the coarse wool, its lanolin scent doing little to calm her frayed nerves. Not only that, but a small boy, no older than 5, chased a wooden toy too close to her secluded corner. He tripped, tumbling with a yelp, his hand brushing her worn skirt. Instantly, his mother, a fierce-eyed beta female, swooped down. Kale! Away from her! Her voice was a hiss, sharp as a wolf's snarl. The mother pulled the child back as if Rebecca carried a plague, her eyes wide with unmasked disgust. In that moment, Rebecca felt it, the cold, undeniable truth of their contempt. She was an untouchable, a pariah, something to be avoided. Just like that, the boy's innocent touch became another weapon against her. Because of that, a suffocating shame bloomed in her throat. Deep down, she knew the truth. She was nothing to them, less than nothing. Her goal always was to simply get through the day unnoticed, to become small enough to disappear. Yet, even that minimal wish was constantly denied. This constant emotional abuse was her ordinary world, setting the baseline for the deep-seated misbelief that she was utterly worthless. She was a ghost in her own pack, defined by what she lacked, not by who she was. After that, she pushed herself further into the shadows of the den, the damp stone wall cold against her back. Her gaze drifted towards the small, grimy window, where a sliver of the waxing moon hung in the twilight sky. It was almost full. Almost time. The thought, a silent reminder of the annual mating ceremony, filled her with a familiar, suffocating dread. She didn't know what scared her more, the ceremony itself, or the certainty of her isolation within it. Her heart pounded so loudly, she feared the others might hear it over their low murmurs. This wasn't just about the moon. It was about the impending public shaming, the final confirmation of her worthlessness. The air thickened around her, heavy with unspoken judgment. The scent of pine and damp earth clung to Rebecca as she slipped through the trees, a small worn basket clutched in her hand. Meanwhile, the main path hummed with excited chatter. Young couples, their faces flushed with anticipation, hurried towards the central clearing, their laughter light and unrestrained. She paused behind a thick cluster of elderberry bushes, the sweet, earthy smell a comfort. From there, she watched Alara, her silver-streaked hair gleaming in the fading light, loop her arm through Liam's, both radiating a hope so tangible it almost hurt to witness. "Our bond is destined, isn't it, Liam?" Alara purred, her voice dripping with possessive sweetness. "Of course, Luna Lyra declared it," Liam affirmed, his chest puffed out. Rebecca's breath hitched. Lyra, who saw Omegas as glorified servants, who delighted in pointing out Rebecca's abnormality. Just like that, the fleeting glimmer of longing for acceptance for a mate of her own was brutally extinguished. What followed was Lyra's dismissive tone carrying on the breeze. Imagine any Omega finding a true mate. Pathetic. They're meant to serve, not to be claimed. Rebecca clutched her basket tighter. Because of that, a quiet, desperate hope to escape the coming shame coiled in her stomach. Beneath the shadow of her own despair, she spotted a small, fragile fern, its leaves bruised and trampled near the path. Without thinking, her body moved on instinct. She knelt, her fingers brushing the delicate fronds. A tiny bird, its wing bent at an odd angle, lay hidden beneath. It chirped weakly, a sound of pure vulnerability. Her heart ached. This poor thing. She gently scooped it up, its warmth a fragile pulse against her skin. It was a secret act of kindness, a tender contrast to the harshness of her world. This quiet act showed her gentle nature, a stark contrast to her perceived weakness. Her core strength, her empathy, was hidden, misunderstood. Can Rebecca ever truly believe in her own worth? The question haunted her. Soon after, a familiar, heavy tread sounded behind her. Rebecca froze, her pulse leaping. A pack elder, usually indifferent, passed by. Their eyes, dark and knowing, lingered on her for a beat too long. They didn't say a word, but the pitying glance, so sharp and unexpected, chilled Rebecca to the bone. It was a look that confirmed her worst fears. The elder's expression sealed it. The ceremony was not just for mating, but for marking the outcasts. The unspoken dread was now a certainty. Her hands trembled as she cradled the injured bird, feeling its fragile heartbeat mimic her own. The air thickened again, heavy with impending doom. The main clearing thrummed with the nervous energy of the Shadowmoon pack. Torches, freshly lit, cast dancing shadows that stretched and warped, making the familiar faces seem monstrous. A chill wind, sharp with the promise of autumn, whipped through the crowd, carrying the murmur of anticipation. Rebecca stood at the very edge, pressed against the rough bark of an ancient oak, trying to blend into its gnarled trunk. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence that stretched before Alpha Thorn. Thorn, a towering figure even in human form, strode to the ceremonial stone, Luna Lyra clinging possessively to his arm. Lyra's smile was a cruel, thin line, her eyes scanning the crowd with predatory glee. Valerius, having witnessed the injustice from the shadows, his presence unseen, observed the impending public execution. Thorn's voice, deep and resonant, boomed through the clearing. "Tonight, we honor tradition. Tonight, we strengthen the Shadowmoon pack." His words were met with a ripple of agreement, but Rebecca felt their true venom. "Weakness," Thorn declared, his gaze sweeping over the crowd, stopping just short of Rebecca, "will be purged. Those unfit to bear the pack mark, those who are an abomination to our lineage, will be cast out." He didn't name her, not directly, but the collective glances, the pointed nudges, the snickers, they all converged on Rebecca. It was an unspoken accusation, loud and clear. Her stomach churned. Maybe it was fate, but Lyra's eyes, cold and sharp, found Rebecca's and held them, a smirk twisting her lips. No matter how hard she tried, Rebecca couldn't become small enough. Her cheeks burned with humiliation, a rising panic threatening to consume her. She felt like a trapped animal, the scent of fear acrid in her own nose. The truth unraveled before her eyes. This wasn't just a ceremony, it was her public execution. What's worse, her initial goal to remain invisible utterly shattered. Her premonition of being targeted was confirming true. The fear of being outcast was no longer a vague dread, but a tangible, immediate threat. As the silence stretched, she felt the eyes of the pack on her, the collective weight of their judgment crushing her. A single tear, cold and silent, tracked down her face, reflecting the almost full moon hanging mockingly above. Her world tilted, a silent scream trapped in her throat. She didn't know what scared her more, the banishment itself or the emptiness that would follow. She knew, deep down, this was only the beginning. The crackle of the torches felt like 1,000 tiny needles against Rebecca's skin. Her stomach churned, bile rising in her throat. She could taste the metallic tang of fear. Before she could move, burly pack warriors, their faces grim masks beneath their hoods, seized her. Their hands, rough and unyielding, clamped onto her arms, dragging her from the shelter of the oak. Every step was a fresh agony, a public performance of her humiliation. As if the forest watched, the trees seemed to lean in, whispering their judgment. Her meager belongings, a threadbare shawl, a small pouch of dried herbs she'd secretly gathered, a smooth river stone she cherished, were ripped from her grasp. They scattered like fallen leaves on the trampled earth. Then Alpha Thorn's voice, a thunderclap in the oppressive silence, slammed into her. "Rebecca, Omega of the Shadowmoon pack," he boomed, his words laced with venom. "You are an abomination, unfit for any mate, unfit for this pack." Lyra, standing beside him, her eyes gleaming with malicious triumph, savored every agonizing second. Truth be told, Rebecca's heart shattered. His cruel words, "You are nothing, Rebecca. No one will ever claim you," echoed in the sudden, terrible silence. They branded themselves onto her soul, confirming her deepest, most paralyzing fear about her worthlessness. The cold weight settled in her chest, suffocating her. But then, as the warriors shoved her towards the sacred border, a thin, invisible line etched into the earth. A desperate, animalistic cry tore from her throat. She stumbled, falling to her knees, the sharp pebbles biting into her skin. They didn't care. With a final, brutal push, she was propelled over the line, beyond the hallowed ground. Just like that, her world imploded. She lay there sobbing, the sharp scent of pine and damp soil filling her nostrils, a taste of ash on her tongue. The cold night air bit at her exposed skin. What followed was utter despair, a void where hope once flickered. All she could hear were the receding murmurs of the pack, their condemnation echoing in the darkness. But then, a terrifying, earth-shaking roar ripped through the forest. It wasn't the sound of any wolf she knew, not of any shifter. This was something ancient, something primal. It cut through her despair, a violent guttural sound that made the very ground tremble beneath her. It was a sound that promised something. She didn't know what, rescue or a worse kind of end. But it was coming. The roar intensified, a raw primal sound that vibrated through Rebecca's bones. Fear, stark and cold, replaced her despair. She scrambled backward, pushing herself against the rough bark of a fallen log. Branches snapped under heavy, deliberate footsteps. Meanwhile, the terrified whimpers of the Shadowmoon pack, moments ago so confident in their cruelty, now reached her ears from beyond the sacred border. Their fear was a tangible thing, a thick, palpable presence. Then, he emerged from the deep shadows of the ancient trees. Valerius. He wasn't in wolf form, which somehow made him even more terrifying. He was a towering man, scarred and powerful, his broad shoulders easily twice the width of Thorn's. His presence alone made the very air crackle. She felt it, clear as day, a tangible pressure, like a storm front rolling in. His golden eyes, luminous even in the dim light, were locked solely on her, burning with an intensity that stole her breath. They held a predatory focus, yet an unsettling stillness. Her heart skipped. Who was this man? He moved with a silent, lethal grace, ignoring the terrified faces of the Shadowmoon warriors pressed against their side of the border. They visibly trembled. Even so, Rebecca shrank away, pulling her knees to her chest. She didn't know what scared her more, the pain she'd just endured, or this overwhelming new threat. She expected another judgment, another blow. Because of that, her instinct screamed at her to disappear, to vanish into the deeper woods, even if it meant certain death alone. Her immediate goal was to escape him, fearing further pain or perhaps a fate worse than banishment. She felt overwhelming terror, confusion, and despair, utterly unprepared for his appearance. Can Rebecca ever truly believe in her own worth? The question pulsed with the thundering beat of her heart, challenged by this overwhelming, unexpected presence. With every step he took, the ground vibrated. He stopped just a few feet from her, a giant framed against the shadowed trees. The space between them burned. He reached out a hand, not gently, but with a firm, almost possessive certainty. As if pulled by a string, the air around him thickened, crackling with raw, untamed energy. It left the Shadowmoon pack stunned into terrified silence, their whispers dying on their lips. The silence roared around them, a heavy, expectant blanket. She instinctively flinched, bracing for impact. Valerius's hand, scarred and powerful, didn't strike her. Instead, it brushed her cheek, sending a jolt that sizzled through her veins, a stark contrast to the icy cold she'd felt moments before. His voice, deep and resonant like ancient earth, rumbled through her very bones. "This female is mine," he declared, his gaze sweeping over the frozen faces of the Shadowmoon pack. "She is my true fated mate." The words hung in the air, heavy with undeniable power. Lyra gasped, a small, choked sound of pure disbelief. Thorne's face, already pale with fear, contorted in a silent scream of rage and terror. Without warning, Valerius leaned in, his powerful form eclipsing the world around them. His scent, pine, rain, and something wild, ancient, filled her senses. He didn't just claim her. He marked her. A sharp, piercing pain, not of injury but of profound connection, erupted at her neck. It was a bite, swift and undeniable, followed by a rush of heat, then a soothing warmth that spread through her veins. The mark pulsed, clear as day, an undeniable bond forming between them, sealing her to him before their very eyes. She felt it. Her wolf, long dormant and believed to be non-existent, stirred within her, a quiet purr beginning deep in her chest. It was a sensation she'd never known, a sense of belonging so profound it brought fresh tears to her eyes. Her world tilted. She had no immediate goal, only overwhelming shock, disbelief, and a profound, confusing sense of being fiercely claimed and protected after a lifetime of utter rejection. What's worse, the Shadowmoon pack recoiled, not in anger, but in horror and disbelief. Their faces, a mixture of shock and dawning dread, painted a vivid picture of their dawning realization. They hadn't just banished an Omega, they had banished the Lycan King's fated Luna. With a growl that rose in his throat, a sound of primal possession, Valerius gathered Rebecca into his arms. He didn't ask. He simply lifted her, cradling her against his chest as if she weighed nothing. He turned his back on the stunned, terrified pack. He walked away, carrying her as though she was the most precious thing in his vast world. The cool air wrapped around them, but the warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart against her ear, was her new reality. Her heart ached, no longer from pain, but from the dizzying rush of this impossible, miraculous shift. And just like that, everything changed. Her journey of self-discovery had formally begun, challenging her core misbelief with every beat of her new mate's heart. She was claimed. The air smelled of unfamiliar richness, sandalwood, polished stone, and Valerius's own potent earthy scent that now clung to Rebecca like a second skin. Her eyes, still heavy with the exhaustion of emotional whiplash, fluttered open. She blinked. Sunlight, filtered through sheer, impossibly fine drapes, spilled across a room larger than Thorne's entire alpha den. This wasn't a bed, it was a cloud, piled with silken sheets and plush furs. Just like that, the rough ground of her banishment, the sting of pebbles against her skin felt like a distant, cruel dream. A soft chime. Moments later, a slender female, her fur a deep auburn in human form, entered with a silver tray laden with exotic fruits and steaming herbal tea. Her bow was deep, respectful. "Luna, King Valerius bids you a good morning. He asks if you require anything." Luna. The word, soft and deferential, landed in Rebecca's ears with the weight of a foreign crown. Her throat tightened. She looked at her reflection in the polished surface of the bedside table. It was a stranger in unfamiliar, pristine nightclothes, no longer the tattered Omega. She wasn't sure who she saw staring back, but it certainly wasn't nothing. Soon after, Valerius entered, his presence still formidable, but here, in the quiet luxury of his private chambers, it was tinged with an unexpected softness. He moved with the quiet grace of a predator at ease. "Rest well, mate?" His voice, that deep rumble from the forest, now held a tender undertone. He sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress barely dipping under his weight, his golden eyes searching hers. "You are safe here, Rebecca. This is your home now." His hand, strong and calloused, covered hers. A shockwave of warmth spread from his touch, grounding her. Deep down, she knew the truth. She should feel relieved. Yet a deep disorientation settled in her stomach. Her goal was simply to understand this new reality. She felt suspicious of the sudden kindness, still grappling with ingrained unworthiness. Was this real? Could this possibly be her life? Her mind, accustomed to constant scorn, struggled to reconcile the gentle deference of the servants, the opulent surroundings, and the powerful king's quiet protection. Her old internal monologue, the one that whispered, "You are nothing," fought hard against this overwhelming new truth. Can Rebecca ever truly believe in her own worth, surrounded by this opulence she feels so undeserving of? The question hovered in the air between them. Even so, the sheer luxury, this strange golden cage, was undeniably beautiful. After Valerius left, the silence in the grand chamber felt too vast, too quiet. Rebecca slid from the bed, the thick carpet like moss beneath her bare feet. She wandered, tracing patterns on an ornate chest, feeling the cool silk of drapes against her skin. While the opulent newness was overwhelming, a strange curiosity pricked at her. She reached for a small, intricately carved wooden bird perched on a windowsill, its wings spread as if in flight. Her fingers brushed its smooth surface. As if fate demanded it, a faint, iridescent glow shimmered around her fingertips, barely perceptible. The wooden bird, instead of remaining still, gently lifted, hovering for a single, impossible breath before settling back down. Her heart skipped. She snatched her hand back, staring at it as if it might betray her. Confusion, hot and sharp, flared within her. Had she imagined it? Was it the lingering shock from yesterday? Then, the chamber door opened softly. It was Alara, Valerius's oldest advisor, her face creased with ancient wisdom, her eyes sharp. She carried a steaming cup of something fragrant. "Luna," Alara murmured, setting the cup on a nearby table. Her gaze, however, was fixed not on the cup but on Rebecca's trembling hand, then on the wooden bird. "Your touch is unique." She spoke without judgment, just quiet observation. Alara's voice was gentle. "The king sensed a stirring in you. What your old pack called weakness, we call latent power. It is a different kind of strength, Luna. Empathy, connection. Sometimes, even more." She explained that Rebecca's perceived lack of a wolf form might not be a lack at all, but a different manifestation. a rare, ancient lineage the Lycan King had only heard legends of. Her goal now was to understand what just happened, dismissing it as a fluke or imagination. She felt a mix of confusion, disbelief, and a faint tremor of fear or excitement about these strange occurrences. Can Rebecca ever truly believe in her own worth when her own body is still so foreign to her? In that moment, Rebecca felt a spark, tiny but undeniable. A quiet thrill mingled with her apprehension. Alara continued, her voice soft but firm. Your powers are linked to your emotions, Luna, to your heart. They are raw, untamed. But the king will help you understand. He understands what it means to carry a great strength and how to harness it. Alara's words provided the first hint of how her former weakness could be a formidable asset, subtly confirming her unique potential. Her words and Valerius's foresight were small successes in her journey to truly believe in herself. Rebecca looked at her hands again, no longer just instruments of mundane tasks, but vessels of something profoundly unknown. This was a step, however small, towards answering the core emotional question. She wasn't just claimed, she was awakening. The grand corridors of Valerius's fortress buzzed with activity, a stark contrast to the stifling silence of her former pack's dens. Guards, towering and silently watchful, stood at every archway, their forms rippling with barely contained power. The air hummed with an energy that spoke of ancient lineage and absolute authority. Valerius, sensing her apprehension, placed a reassuring hand at the small of her back as they walked. His touch was a steadying anchor in this dizzying new world. "This is my council chamber," Valerius rumbled, leading her to a hidden gallery overlooking a large circular room. "Here, the heart of the kingdom beats." She peered down, witnessing a minor council meeting in session. Figures with impressive fur patterns, their human forms exuding power, debated logistics, resource allocation, and territorial disputes. She saw Valerius's absolute authority when he spoke. A single deep word could silence an entire room, his voice resonating with ancient power. But then, a tense silence fell. A grizzled elder, his face lined with battle scars, spoke, his tone sharp. "A rogue band has trespassed near the eastern borders, Luna. They claimed allegiance to the Shadowmoon pack." Rebecca's breath caught. Thorn, Lyra. The names sent a jolt of ice through her veins. Valerius's eyes, even from this distance, hardened. He didn't hesitate. "They will be met with the full force of my justice." His declaration was swift, unwavering, and utterly final. She saw the ferocity in his eyes, the unforgiving nature of his justice. Her goal was to observe and learn, but the reality of the immense responsibility Valerius carried and the dangers she was now a part of slammed into her. She realized this wasn't just a golden cage, it was a kingdom under constant threat. And now, she was at its very heart. Thorn's shadow, she understood now, stretched far beyond the confines of their pack. After that, Valerius took her to a training yard, where elite Lycan guards moved with terrifying precision, their shifts between human and wolf form seamless blurs of power. The scent of sweat, musk, and damp earth filled the air. She saw their disciplined strength, the unspoken loyalty in their eyes. She witnessed Valerius correct a warrior's stance with a sharp, precise command, his leadership absolute. As the scene ended, Valerius caught her eye. His gaze, a silent question, seemed to ask, "Can you accept this? Can you stand by my side in this world?" Rebecca looked out at the sprawling kingdom, the ancient stone walls, the vast forests beyond. Her old life, the constant fear and humiliation, felt impossibly distant now. It was truly gone. What remained was a burgeoning sense of awe, trepidation, and a terrifying, exhilarating understanding that her connection to Valerius was not just a bond, but an entry into a world of immense power and peril. A new kind of fight was coming. The scent of Valerius's study, old parchment, rich mahogany, and his grounding presence usually offered Rebecca a sense of peace. But today, A cold, metallic tang of unease pricked at her senses. She was practicing controlling her emerging powers, trying to guide a tiny flame between her palms. As if pulled by a string, the flame flickered erratically, mirroring the sudden tremor in her own hands. Valerius, watching from across the room, his golden eyes observing, noticed her struggle. Meanwhile, a messenger, breathless and covered in dust, burst into the room. He carried a small, crudely carved wooden wolf, the emblem of the Shadowmoon pack. "My king!" he gasped, bowing low. "A patrol found this near the old border, and we captured a rogue. He spoke of the Shadowmoon Alpha Thorn, said they're looking for her." His gaze darted to Rebecca, filled with a mixture of fear and awe. Rebecca's heart pounded so loudly, she feared Valerius could hear it. Thorn. The name was a whip crack across her soul. The rogue's testimony that they were looking for her confirmed her worst fears. They hadn't forgotten. Instead, their regret wasn't remorse, but a malicious, possessive rage. Her past trauma, barely buried, surged to the surface. She felt a resurgence of her old insecurities, a profound anxiety that her past would somehow taint her new life, causing the small flame in her hands to erupt into a wild, uncontrollable burst of heat before dying completely. What followed was a suffocating pressure in her chest. She wanted to ignore it, to downplay the signs, but the very air around her seemed to vibrate with the echoes of Thorn's cruel words. "You are nothing, Rebecca. No one will ever claim you." The fire might have died, but a new, cold flame of fear ignited within her. Could she truly escape them? Her inability to control her powers under this stress highlighted her internal struggle and the need for deeper understanding. Can Rebecca ever truly believe in her own worth when the ghosts of her past still hold such power over her? Valerius stepped forward, his expression grim. He looked at the charred spot on the table where her power had lashed out, then at her trembling form. He didn't need words to understand her distress, the strange energy radiating from her. He realized the depth of her emotional wounds and the raw, untamed connection to her untapped power. The fight was far from over. The missive arrived not through a messenger, but a lone Shadowmoon scout, tied to a tree at the Lycan King's border, a piece of parchment nailed to the trunk above his head. Valerius brought it directly to Rebecca, his jaw tight. "Thorn's arrogance knows no bounds," he rumbled, his voice low and dangerous. The parchment bore Thorn's crude seal. Valerius unfolded it, his golden eyes blazing as he read the condescending words. Rebecca peered over his shoulder. The message was explicit. Thorn demanded her return. The abomination who dared to sully sacred pack lines. He spoke of her as stolen property and issued a thinly veiled threat against innocent pack members if Valerius refused. "You may be a king," the letter sneered, "but even kings cannot hold what is not truly theirs." Lyra's signature, beneath Thorn's, was a flourish of spite. A cold rage, unlike anything Rebecca had ever known, ignited in her belly. It wasn't the searing, chaotic fear from before, but a clean, burning fury. How dare he? Her goal shifted from mere avoidance to a burgeoning desire for justice, to prove Thorn wrong in every fiber of his being. She felt a powerful mixture of renewed anger and fierce defiance. Her dormant powers, perhaps fueled by this righteous wrath, surged. The air around her shimmered, objects subtly vibrating on Valerius's desk. With a sharp gasp, she felt a profound shift, a unique defense mechanism, a ripple of raw energy that pushed outward, forming an invisible, protective shield around them both. Valerius, seeing her powerful reaction, didn't flinch. Instead, his expression transformed from anger to awe, then to fierce pride. His lips curved into a slow, predatory smile. "Indeed," he murmured, his voice a low growl, "some things are more theirs than even they can comprehend." He realized the true extent of his mate's capabilities and the depth of the threat they faced. This was the midpoint. Thorn's direct communication had escalated the external conflict dramatically, turning a general threat into a personal challenge. Rebecca's raw, powerful reaction demonstrated a crucial step in her self-acceptance and the awakening of her offensive capabilities. The stakes became not just her personal safety, but the potential safety of Valerius and his kingdom, directly challenging her misbelief about her own powerlessness. He vowed to protect her, but more importantly, he encouraged her to hone this newfound power. He saw her not as fragile, but as formidable. The game had changed. Following the revelation, Valerius dedicated himself to helping Rebecca understand and control the wild, burgeoning energy within her. Their training wasn't about physical combat, but about connection, connecting her emotions to her power, her heart to her innate magic. Each morning, they would retreat to a secluded, sun-dappled grove, the scent of damp moss and blooming wild hyacinths filling the air. He taught her meditative practices, ancient Lycan techniques that focused not on suppression, but on acceptance. "Your strength comes from within," he rumbled one afternoon, his voice low, his fingers gently guiding her hand as she tried to channel a ripple of energy. "It is part of you, Luna. Do not fight it. Embrace it." He revealed little pieces of himself, too. He spoke of the heavy mantle of leadership, the constant pressure of his ancient lineage, the quiet burden of waiting centuries for his fated mate. He didn't just protect, he understood. With every heartbeat, Rebecca's internal world began to shift. Her goal was to master her powers, driven by a newfound resolve to protect herself and Valerius. She felt a growing sense of confidence, a profound connection to Valerius, and a nascent belief in her own strength. One afternoon, as she finally managed to sustain a shimmering aura of protective energy around them, a small, triumphant smile touched her lips. "You are a force, Rebecca," Valerius murmured, his golden eyes warm. His pride was a tangible thing, wrapping around her like a comforting blanket. He pulled her close, his embrace solid, secure. This scene solidified Rebecca's commitment to her new life and powers. It deepened their relationship, moving beyond just protection to mutual trust and partnership. It showed her actively taking steps to overcome her internal flaw by embracing her strength. As Rebecca felt a surge of controlled energy for the first time, not chaotic, but a steady hum, she looked at Valerius. Her gaze held not just gratitude, but a newfound determination. She was no longer the Omega who cowered, but the Luna who would rise. The path ahead was fraught with danger, she knew, but for the first time, she felt ready. A new chapter of their shared story was about to begin. The Grand Council Hall of Valerius's kingdom was a symphony of hushed murmurs and the subtle scent of powerful shifters. Rich tapestries depicting ancient Lycan history adorned the stone walls. Rebecca, dressed in a gown of deep emerald that shimmered like forest leaves, stood beside Valerius. Her heart thrummed a nervous rhythm, but beneath it, a new kind of confidence stirred. This was no longer just about her survival. It was about accepting her place as Luna, proving her worth not just to Valerius, but to herself and his formidable kingdom. Valerius's voice, a steadying presence beside her, introduced her to his inner circle, a collection of weathered alphas and shrewd advisors. Their eyes, sharp and assessing, met hers. Some offered polite if cool nods, but then an older beta, his fur grizzled with age, spoke, his voice tinged with skepticism. "Forgive my bluntness, King, but this mate was an Omega, banished. What strength can she bring to a Lycan throne?" The words, though veiled, were a direct challenge to her suitability, an echo of Thorne's prejudice. Rebecca's breath caught, but a different emotion rose this time. Not shame, but a quiet, simmering defiance. She met the beta's gaze directly. "My strength," she said, her voice clear, though a tremor of nervousness still threatened. She reached out, a soft emerald glow shimmering around her hands, the same unique energy Alara had shown her how to access. "It is not the strength of teeth and claw alone. It is the strength of empathy, of connection." She subtly extended her senses, feeling the beta's underlying unease, his ingrained traditions clashing with this unexpected reality. and of recognizing potential, even where others see only weakness. Just like that, the beta's expression faltered. A murmur rippled through the council, not of dissent, but of surprised respect. She hadn't yelled, hadn't argued, she had shown them. Valerius's hand, warm and strong, found hers, a silent squeeze of pride. This scene showed Rebecca actively stepping into her new role, confronting external doubts and further integrating into Valerius's world. It was a public affirmation of her commitment to being Luna, marking a clear departure from her banished Omega self. After the meeting, Valerius's smile was wide, full of open admiration. "You were magnificent, Mott." His pride was a solid thing, binding them tighter, foreshadowing the immense challenges still to come. The scent of blood, faint and metallic, pierced the usually crisp morning air, pulling Rebecca from her thoughts. She stood with Valerius on a high ridge overlooking a valley, the rising sun painting the sky in fiery hues. Below, Valerius's scouts were returning, their faces grim. What followed was an immediate shift in the atmosphere. Tension, cold and sharp, descended like a shroud. "Shadowmoon!" one of the scouts gritted out, tossing a mangled Lycan reconnaissance drone, a small, intricate device at Valerius's feet. Thorn sent a scouting party, aggressive. They tried to cross the river pass. Rebecca's heart clenched. Thorn, fueled by rage and fear, was making his move. Valerius's jaw clenched, a low growl rumbling in his chest. "They're testing us," he said, his golden eyes narrowed. "They underestimate our reach." Moments later, a desperate cry echoed from the valley below. Valerius and his warriors descended like a silent, deadly wave. Rebecca, despite her fear, felt an undeniable pull to follow. Her wolf, still a quiet presence, but growing stronger, stirring with a fierce need to protect what was theirs. She witnessed the ensuing skirmish from a hidden perch, the clash of bodies, the snarls and shouts filling the air. Valerius, a blur of strength and precision, disarmed and contained the Shadowmoon warriors with brutal efficiency, preventing true bloodshed but delivering a clear message. This scene escalated the external conflict from threats to direct action, demonstrating Thorn's desperate moves. Rebecca, watching the raw ferocity of Valerius's justice, finally understood the depth of the Lycan King's power. Then, as a particularly arrogant Shadowmoon warrior tried to sneak a desperate attack on Valerius, something inside Rebecca snapped. A wave of pure, concentrated energy, like a silent, invisible whip, lashed out from her. It didn't strike the warrior, but it buckled the ground around him, causing him to stumble and fall, giving Valerius the opening he needed to subdue him easily. Her contribution, subtle but decisive, was undeniable. Soon after, a captured Shadowmoon warrior, his face a mask of terror and disbelief, was brought before Valerius. His eyes, wide with fear, flickered to Rebecca. He was one of the guards who had dragged her from the oak tree. The look of dawning horror on his face as he recognized the banished Omega now standing regal and powerful beside the Lycan King was a stark moment of role reversal. The Omega, he choked out, his voice trembling. Rebecca met his gaze. No fear, no anger, only a quiet, resolute power. She understood that this conflict must be decisively ended. The crumpled parchment carried by a lone terrified Shadowmoon runner lay on Valerius's war table. Its words were a desperate plea, laced with the bitter dregs of Thorn's shattered pride. He offered a truce, a fragile peace. If the king would see reason and return what was rightfully his. He even suggested forgiving Rebecca's aberration if she willingly returned. The insult was clear. Thorn still saw her as a possession, not a person, not a Luna. Valerius's growl was low, dangerous. "He still believes you are something to be bargained for." His golden eyes, usually so intense, held a simmering fury. He waited, his gaze on Rebecca, allowing her the choice. Her throat tightened. This was it, the final, desperate attempt to pull her back into the darkness she had escaped. Deep down, she knew the truth. Thorn's offer wasn't peace. It was a trap, a return to the humiliation she had fought so hard to escape. Her goal was to utterly sever ties with her past tormentors and protect her new life. She walked to the table, her steps firm, her spine straight. She picked up the parchment, her fingers brushing the crude wolf emblem, a symbol of so much pain. And then, without another word, she tore it in half, the ripping sound loud in the tense silence of the war room. "Tell Alpha Thorn," Rebecca's voice, clear and unwavering, sliced through the quiet, "that I am not his to return. I am Luna of the Lycan King, and his arrogance has sealed his pack's fate." Her gaze met Valerius's, empowered, resolute. She was completely committed to him and their shared future. Her decision solidified her transformation, leaving no doubt that a final confrontation with the Shadowmoon pack was imminent. She completely rejected her internal flaw by asserting her worth. Valerius, seeing her unwavering resolve, gave a silent nod of approval and pride, his eyes gleaming. "The Luna has spoken," he announced to his awaiting warriors, his voice resonating with power. The preparations for war, for the decisive end to Thorn's reign, began in earnest, an unstoppable force now set in motion. There was no turning back now. The scent of anticipation, sharp and metallic, hung heavy in the air as Valerius's Lycan army moved like a shadow across the land. Rebecca rode beside him, her gaze fixed on the horizon where the Shadowmoon territory lay. Her unique senses, sharpened by her awakening power, picked up subtle shifts in the wind, a prickle of unease that wasn't her own. Valerius had launched their initial strategic move, a swift, targeted push towards a key Shadowmoon supply route, aiming to cut off their resources before a full confrontation. But then, the expected success shattered. A scout, his wolf form panting, collapsed before them. "My king! Ambush! They knew! Thorn! He laid a trap at the pass. Alpha Kale was injured badly, many fallen." The words were like a physical blow. Thorn, fueled by desperation and a surprising cunning, had anticipated their move. He had countered it, leading to a significant setback. Rebecca's heart plummeted. Alpha Kale, a wise and formidable Lycan, was gravely wounded. A deep sense of worry, cold and insidious, snaked through Rebecca. Her goal was to support Valerius, to understand this new, unexpected threat. But a return of old fears gnawed at her. Had her presence, her banishment, made Thorn desperate enough to become truly dangerous? Had she brought this trouble to Valerius? The weight of the setback pressed down on her, the air thick with defeat. It showed that Thorn was still a formidable threat, raising the stakes and creating doubt. It directly impacted Valerius, making the conflict personal and testing Rebecca's ability to cope with adversity in her new life. This forced her to confront the lingering echoes of her self-doubt. Valerius, though outwardly strong, his face a mask of iron control, couldn't hide the flicker of concern in his golden eyes, the subtle tightening of his jaw. He was a king, but even kings felt loss. His fatigue, a brief shadow across his features, made Rebecca realize the true weight of his position and the fresh, agonizing danger they were in. The initial momentum was lost, replaced by a chilling uncertainty. The healing den smelled of pungent herbs and the coppery tang of fresh blood. Alpha Kale lay on a cot, his breath shallow. Rebecca, tears blurring her vision, tried to focus her unique healing touch, the same gentle power she'd unknowingly used on the injured bird weeks ago. She poured her energy, her compassion into him. But under the immense pressure of the situation, the overwhelming fear for Kale, and her resurfacing self-doubt, her powers faltered. The shimmering light around her hands flickered, then died, leaving Kale's ragged breathing unchanged. "It's not enough," she whispered, her voice cracking. Her goal was to regain control, to contribute, but she was failing. She felt profound frustration, despair, and a crushing return of her old insecurities. She was just an Omega, after all. What did she know of true power, of healing a great Alpha? Then, a brusque voice, belonging to an older Lycan warrior, echoed her fears. "The Luna's touch seems untested. Not quite strong enough, eh?" He didn't mean to be cruel, but his words landed like a physical blow. The internal misbelief that she was nothing was intensely re-triggered. A wave of hopelessness washed over her. She questioned if she truly could be the Luna Valerius needed, or if she was just a burden, her inherent weakness reasserting itself at the worst possible moment. This scene brought Rebecca to a critical internal crossroads. Her powers, once a source of burgeoning hope, now seemed to betray her, reinforcing her deep-seated flaw. It felt like the ultimate test of her transformation, and she appeared to be failing. Can Rebecca ever truly believe in her own worth when her nascent powers abandon her in their hour of need? She retreated from Cale's bedside, her shoulders slumping. The scent of fear, her own fear, was thick in her nose. She couldn't face Valerius right now. The opulence of her chambers, once a comfort, now felt like a cruel mockery. She curled up on the silken furs, feeling utterly defeated and alone despite being surrounded by luxury. The silence in the vast room was deafening, amplifying the painful whispers of her self-doubt. The silence in Rebecca's opulent chamber was thick, suffocating. The scent of her own despair hung heavy, mixing with the fading scent of sandalwood. She lay curled on the plush furs, not sleeping, just existing in a bleak internal landscape. Memories, sharp as shattered glass, flickered behind her eyelids. Thorn's sneering face as he declared her nothing, the jeering faces of the pack as they cast her out, the biting cold of the dirt outside the sacred border. Her internal monologue was a torrent of self-recrimination. I am nothing. Thorn was right. I am useless. I've brought this trouble to Valerius. He deserves a strong Luna, not a broken Omega. Her chest ached, a hollow, echoing pain. She might be tempted to flee, to disappear back into the anonymity she craved, believing she was only bringing more trouble to Valerius, to this kingdom. Even so, the thought of leaving him, after he had shown her such kindness, such belief, was a fresh wound. She had to protect him, even from herself. Suddenly, the scent of pine and ancient power filled the room. Valerius. He moved silently, his imposing form casting long shadows across the floor. He sat beside her, not speaking, just observing. His golden eyes, usually so fierce, held a raw vulnerability, a mirror of her own pain. He didn't try to fix her with empty words. Instead, he simply reached for her hand, his touch warm and grounding. "Rebecca," he rumbled, his voice low, raw. "You are not nothing. Your strength, it is different, but it is vital. I need you. Not just your power, but you." He pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I have faced countless battles alone, little maid, but I want to face this one with you. Your unique spirit, your empathy, that is what we need. You are the light in my darkness." His voice, though strong, held a subtle tremor, expressing his deep need for her unique strength. This moment wasn't about solving the external problem, but about her internal struggle, her crucible. Rebecca, tears streaming down her face, finally looked at him, truly looked past her self-loathing. His unwavering belief, his own vulnerability, was the anchor she desperately needed. It was a tiny, desperate flicker of hope, ignited by his steady, unwavering faith. Can Rebecca ever truly believe in her own worth when the Lycan King himself, a being of immense power, openly expresses his need for her? The question, which had haunted every scene, every breath, now found its answer, not in words, but in a choice, to fight, not just for him, but for herself. A silent promise passed between them. The climb back was about to begin. The sun, a fiery orb climbing above the Lycan peaks, streamed into Valerius's private training grounds. Its warmth kissed Rebecca's skin, a stark contrast to the lingering chill of despair from the night before. Valerius stood opposite her, his presence a solid, unyielding anchor. His belief in her, so clearly articulated in her darkest hour, had ignited a spark. Can Rebecca ever truly believe in her own worth? The question, once a torment, now felt like a challenge she was finally ready to face. "Feel it," Valerius rumbled, his voice a low vibration that resonated through the earth beneath her feet. "The power. It's always been there. You simply feared it, because it didn't look like theirs." Rebecca closed her eyes, focusing inward. She reached for the raw, untamed energy that had flickered and died in the healing den, but this time, she didn't fight it. She welcomed it. She let her empathy, her long-perceived weakness, guide her. What followed was a sensation unlike any she'd known. A warmth bloomed beneath her skin, spreading from her core. It wasn't the volatile heat of earlier outbursts, but a steady, shimmering glow. Her senses sharpened, the scent of pine and damp earth intensified, the distant chirping of birds became crystal clear. As if the world narrowed, she felt the life force of the very plants beneath her feet, a silent song of growth. She opened her eyes. Before her, a small withered sapling, recently transplanted and struggling, began to unfurl its leaves, its muted green deepening into a vibrant emerald. It wasn't just healing. It was accelerated growth. A new, profound understanding dawned on her. Her weakness was indeed a dormant, extraordinary strength, the power over life itself, nurturing, creating, healing on a scale she hadn't imagined. A surge of exhilaration, pure and unadulterated, coursed through her. She had chosen to embrace her powers, and they answered. This scene marked Rebecca's full internal transformation. She had moved beyond merely surviving to actively taking control of her destiny and her powers. This was a definitive answer to the core emotional question. She was beginning to believe in her worth. Valerius, watching, his expression a mixture of awe and fierce pride, stepped forward. "My Luna," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion, cementing their partnership. The scent of strategy, crisp parchment, sharp ink, and the musky scent of focused warriors filled Valerius's war room. Maps of the Shadowmoon territory, etched with patrol routes and defense points, lay splayed across a massive oak table. Rebecca, now a more active participant, leaned over the map, her newfound confidence radiating from her. She was no longer just a protected mate, but an equal partner. "Thorn will expect us to strike at their borders where their strongest warriors are," Valerius rumbled, his finger tracing a line. A frontal assault would be costly. His goal was to formulate the final strategy, to decisively end the conflict. Rebecca felt focused, determined, and a genuine sense of purpose in her new role as Luna. "But he doesn't know our strength," Rebecca interjected, her voice clear and firm. She pointed to a winding, overgrown path, marked as impassable on the map, that led deep into the Shadowmoon territory, close to their main den. "I remember this path. It was known only to the Omegas and the outcasts, used for foraging in secret. Thorn wouldn't guard it. He still sees Omegas as inconsequential." She then looked at Valerius, her gaze steady. "And my abilities, they aren't for fighting in the traditional sense. But what if we used them to disrupt, to create diversions, to subtly weaken their will to fight before the main engagement?" The seasoned alphas around the table exchanged glances, skepticism warring with curiosity. Valerius, however, met her gaze, a profound trust in his eyes. "Tell us more, Luna," he encouraged, a predatory glint in his own golden eyes. Rebecca then detailed her plan, small strategic uses of her empathic touch to sow confusion, to subtly amplify the fear Thorn already instilled in his own pack, to create an opening for Valerius's elite forces. This scene demonstrated Rebecca's integration into her role as Luna and her value as a strategic mind. It showed her confidence in her own judgment and her active role in shaping their future, directly challenging her internal flaw. As the final preparations were made, Rebecca and Valerius shared a moment of quiet resolve, a powerful, unspoken understanding passing between them. The path to justice was laid. The air thrummed with a different kind of power now, not fear, but resolute might. Valerius's Lycan army, a silent, disciplined wave of formidable shifters, began its advance towards the Shadowmoon territory. Rebecca rode a magnificent black wolf, its fur shimmering like polished obsidian, matching the intensity in her own gaze. She wasn't just with Valerius. She was a visible, undeniable presence at the head of his forces, a declaration to the world. The scent of anticipation, heavy and electric, clung to the wind. Rumors, faster than any scout, had already galloped ahead. The Lycan King is coming. And with him, the banished Omega, now his powerful Luna. She felt it, clear as day, the fear rippling through the land ahead, a fear born of Thorn's own actions. Her goal was to reach the Shadowmoon pack and deliver justice. She felt a deep sense of unwavering resolve, no longer fearful, but empowered and ready for the confrontation. With every heartbeat, the tension mounted. The trees, once witnesses to her shame, now stood silent sentinels to her unwavering march. As if the forest watched, it held its breath. She felt the strength of the mighty wolf beneath her, the rhythmic pounding of its paws echoing the surge of power within her own veins. Her wolf, fully awake now, pressed forward, eager for the confrontation. Soon after, a familiar landmark appeared. The gnarled oak, the very one she had cowered against during Thorn's cruel declaration. Beyond it lay the sacred border, the invisible line she had been forced across. But this time, she didn't stop. She didn't flinch. As the wind shifted, carrying the faint, acrid scent of the Shadowmoon den, Rebecca urged her wolf forward. She crossed the line, not as a banished outcast, but as the powerful Luna, standing tall and unafraid. Her world tilted, not from fear, but from the dizzying certainty of inevitable change. The reckoning was here. The Shadowmoon pack's clearing, once the stage for Rebecca's humiliation, now crackled with a different kind of tension. The scent of fear, thick and acrid, wasn't hers, but Thorn's. He stood before his dwindling warriors, Lyra clinging to his side, her face a pale mask of fury and dread. The Lycan King's army, a silent, formidable wall of power, had encircled them. Rebecca dismounted her magnificent wolf, its powerful form settling beside her. She felt the weight of every eye, but this time it was their fear, not her shame, that filled the air. Valerius, a force of nature, stepped forward, but Rebecca placed a hand on his arm. He paused, his golden eyes meeting hers, a silent question passing between them. This was her fight to finish. She walked towards Thorn and Lyra, her emerald gown shimmering, her steps deliberate. Her wolf, a massive black sentinel, paced silently behind her. "Thorn," her voice rang out, clear and steady, devoid of the tremor it once held. "You declared me nothing, an abomination." Her gaze swept over the cowering pack members, many of whom had once scoffed at her. Lyra, her face contorted, shrieked, "You're still just an Omega, a trick. He chose you out of pity." But Rebecca didn't flinch. Instead, she lifted her hands. The air around her shimmered, not with aggressive magic, but with a pure, radiant energy that pulsed outward, enveloping the clearing. It was her empathic power, amplified by her resolve. As if pulled by a string, the fear that Thorn had instilled in his pack, the subtle threads of mistrust, began to fray. She wasn't attacking. She was revealing. She gently, almost imperceptibly, nudged the pack members' minds, not to control them, but to quiet the noise, to let them truly see Thorn and Lyra for what they were, petty, cruel, and now terrified. Thorn roared, lunging forward, but before he could reach her, the invisible barrier of Rebecca's will flared. He hit it like an unseen wall, stumbling back, his face contorting in disbelief. Lyra shrieked, her own meager Luna powers flickering uselessly. Valerius, seeing her decisive, non-violent display of power, intervened, his deep voice booming, "Enough!" He stepped forward, his very presence radiating absolute authority. Thorn and Lyra were utterly defeated, their power broken, their cruelty exposed not by force but by the quiet authority of Rebecca's light. Their once loyal warriors began to shift uneasily, their eyes now seeing the truth. This was the ultimate payoff for Rebecca's journey. She fully embodied her power, resolved the external conflict, and completely shattered her internal misbelief of being nothing. The core emotional question was definitively answered. She now truly believed in her own worth. As Thorn and Lyra cowered, stripped of their power and influence, the rest of the Shadowmoon pack watched in stunned silence, realizing the true power they had banished. The scent of defeat mingled with the crisp forest air, but beneath it a quiet sense of hope began to bloom within the Shadowmoon clearing. Valerius, with Rebecca steadfastly by his side, addressed the stunned pack. His voice, firm but just, resonated through the humbled assembly. Alpha Thorn and Luna Lyra have been stripped of their ranks. Their rule, born of fear and prejudice, is over. No matter how hard she tried, Thorn could not regain his footing. He was subdued by Valerius's warriors, his rage impotent. Lyra, sobbing, was led away. Their fate sealed, they would be imprisoned, confined for their treachery, unable to harm again. Valerius, with the wisdom of centuries, didn't leave the Shadowmoon pack to chaos. Instead, he appointed a provisional alpha, a strong, fair-minded beta who had always shown quiet respect for the pack's true welfare. Rebecca then stepped forward. Her heart ached, not with pity, but with a profound understanding. She looked at the remaining Omegas, the ones who had suffered silently, seen and unseen. She remembered the little boy, Kale, whose mother had pulled him away in disgust. Now those same Omegas looked at her with a dawning awe, a flicker of hope in their eyes. To those who suffered, Rebecca began, her voice soft but carrying surprising authority, justice will be found. This pack will heal, not through cruelty, but through strength found in unity. She offered a gesture of compassion, a promise of guidance to the remaining Omegas, showing the kind of Luna she would be, a protector of the vulnerable, a beacon of fairness. Her light, once dim, now shone brightly. This scene provided closure on the antagonist's fate and the future of the Shadowmoon pack. It showcased Rebecca's growth as a compassionate leader and confirmed the new order she was a part of. Rebecca looked back at the Shadowmoon pack, no longer with fear or shame, but with a gaze of strength and forgiveness, knowing that a true leader lifts up, rather than casts down. The journey back to Valerius's kingdom was not a march of war, but a triumphant return. The air hummed with the joyful anticipation of celebration. Soon after, the Lycan King's stronghold, normally a bastion of quiet power, erupted in a flurry of activity. The celebration for their victory, and more importantly, the formal recognition of Rebecca as Valerius's Luna, was magnificent. Powerful shifters from allied kingdoms arrived, their greetings filled with genuine respect. Rebecca, now fully confident and radiant, stood beside Valerius on a raised dais. The heavy silver circlet of the Luna, intricate and ancient, rested upon her brow, cool against her skin. She looked out at the assembled crowd, Valerius's loyal warriors, his council, and the visiting dignitaries. No longer overwhelmed, she met their gazes with an open, unwavering strength. Her world, once so small and full of shadows, had expanded into a glorious, sunlit vista. Valerius turned to her, his golden eyes, once holding centuries of solitude, now full of a tender, burning love. He pulled her close, his powerful arm wrapping around her waist. Their bond, forged in rejection and defiance, was visibly solidified, not just as fated mates, but as powerful partners. His love was a song in her soul. She felt profound happiness, fulfillment, and a deep, unshakable sense of belonging and worth. Her nothingness had truly become everything. With a single glance, she looked out at the vast kingdom spread beneath them. The forests, the mountains, the distant rivers, they were her home now. Her old internal monologue, the one that had whispered constant self-doubt, was finally irrevocably silenced. The girl who had been cast out, deemed worthless, now stood as the revered Luna, beloved mate to the most powerful Lycan King. The central themes of strength, self-worth, and justice were fully realized. Rebecca, Valerius's hand in hers, represented not just a reign, but a promise that even from the deepest darkness, true light could emerge, forever claiming its rightful place.